I've heard this idea just a couple times from college football fans, but it's an interesting idea to think about. What if the college football playoff was selected after the bowl season? Welcome to College Football Media. Thank you for clicking on this video. You are a good sport. On this channel, we talk about teams, trends, and traditions all the way to logos, history, and predictions. So, if that sounds interesting to you, consider subscribing for in-depth college football content. This is an idea that, by all means, is not fully developed at all. It's honestly far from. It's in the very early stages of being developed at all. I've only heard about it just a few times, and you may not have heard about it at all. It's an idea that might be brought up in conversation, thrown out there, and kind of forgot about. But even though this is not fully thought through, and of course there are a lot of problems with it, it's still something that we should discuss, and then through conversation might be able to find or solve some of those problems. It stems from an existing problem, that the significance of bowl games has been decreasing, specifically due to the college football playoff. This makes sense. If one is very valuable, then the other is not as much. And if you make the other one more valuable, then the previous loses some value. Like an up and down weighing scale. Perhaps you've heard an idea before that the Heisman Trophy should be awarded after the bowl season or the playoffs. And so maybe it's related to that idea in some ways. What if you played the bowl games first and then selected the teams after the bowl season was finished? Well, how would that work just on a basic level? Well, you play through the regular season, conference championship games, and then you have the bowls select whichever teams they want. Of course, you would have your bowl tie-ins. You would still have the Big Ten and Pac-12 go to the Rose Bowl. You could have the Big 12 and SEC meet in the Sugar Bowl and have an ACC champion play an at-large in the Orange Bowl. This would make the bowl games probably a lot more independent once again, rather than having 6 or 4 of the bowl games have a coalition and be a part of the playoff in some way. It would basically reverse that, retract it, and therefore the bowl games would pretty much go back to picking whoever they wanted. Of course, in this case, you would have no guarantee of a 1 playing a 4, a 3, a 2. It doesn't matter. The rankings would not play a significant part in bowl games at all. But it does secure the tradition of bowl games. It secures that old-timey feel that a lot of older college football fans like to hold on to. We all know and we all love the tradition of college football, and it kind of harkens back to that and is able to revitalize it in a lot of ways. For the sake of this video, let's say that the playoff structure stays the same besides the schedule. That you still have a playoff committee and that it still is a 4-team field. Once the bowl season concludes, the playoff committee has 1 day to finalize who is going to be in the playoff. Now the bowls, they can play whenever they want, really. Basically that schedule would remain the same. You can play all the way through December up until January 1st. That January 1st date is very important to the big bowls such as the Rose Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, Orange Bowl, things of that nature. So they will stick to that January 1st date. But for the sake of the playoff being after, I think that no bowl should be allowed to play after January 1st. That is the latest that you can play your bowl game. Of course, still keeping the exception of when January 1st falls on a Sunday and then you play on January 2nd. I think that's still fine. Now, all of the bowls must conclude January 1st, or of course in that odd year. But the day after, on January 2nd, is when the playoff would have to announce who will make the college football playoff. It's very similar and really no different from announcing it the day after the conference championship games. How exactly does this add value to the bowl games when it's not a part of a very valuable semifinal? Now it basically means you have to win your bowl game. The winner of the Rose Bowl would all but automatically be in the playoff. Same for the Sugar Bowl and pretty much same for the Orange Bowl. there would still be no technical automatic qualifiers. But if you are the champion of your Power 5 conference and the champion of this coveted bowl game, then there's a very, very high percentage chance that you make the playoff. But of course, you still have to factor in the rankings. Who was ranked 1 through 4 prior to the bowl season? And if you got upset, then now you're outside of that field. But also think about the number 5, the number 6 ranked teams. Perhaps even in some cases a number 7 ranked team. They go to their bowl game and they take care of business. And in some cases, they just blow out another team, making a really, really strong argument for them to make the playoff. A couple teams ahead of them might lose and open up some spots, or they just straight up jump whoever is ahead of them. It's effectively a way to have an opportunity for those that were outside the bubble for the playoff to make their last statement for why they should be included. That's why it's so valuable, because you could have a 6 ranked team, a 7 ranked team, a 5 jump ahead and make the playoff because they win their bowl game. And if you're a 1 through 4 ranked team and lose your bowl game, sorry, you didn't make the playoff, you should have won your bowl. Of course, I don't think this would automatically mean that only winners of the bowl game make the playoff, but it would in most years be a de facto play-in game. So from that standpoint, I think it makes perfect sense for how you could increase the value of a bowl game and simultaneously increase the value of the semifinals and the national championship. But that's pretty much where the problems come in once the playoff starts. The problems with this structure are probably different than the problems of the structure that we are used to seeing on an annual basis. In this structure, the problems would be logistical. They would be about scheduling. I think it would help silence most of the critics of having too many teams from the same conference in the playoff or a non-conference champion being in. I think it would help silence those critics and help eliminate those problems as a whole, but you have to face these new problems. The weekend after January 1st, the NFL playoffs begin, and they play on Saturday and Sunday for the next 2 weeks, and then that third week in January, they play on Sunday. The weekends after January 1st are pretty much dominated by the NFL playoffs. For college sports, you have to schedule around it. There's no getting through or going up against or competing with the NFL playoffs. The NFL and college football have a very good kind of unspoken agreement about scheduling around each other, both in the regular season and the postseason. And this structure just makes things a lot harder to schedule. I think the easiest thing is to put the national championship game for college football the weekend of the Pro Bowl. And that would be right in between the NFL conference championship games and the Super Bowl. You have that gap week in between when the Pro Bowl is played, and I think you can put the championship easily in that slot. Of course, it moves the national championship back pretty much 2 weeks. It's kind of like right at the end of January, so it would be a whole month after the bowl season ends. For college, I think it would be easy to have 2 weeks between bowl game and semifinal, and then another 2 weeks between the semifinal and championship game. However, how do you fit in the semifinals? There's no great place to put 2 semifinal games right in the middle of the NFL playoffs. You wouldn't really want to put 2 games on Monday because people are back to work at that point. Both Saturday and Sunday are taken up by the NFL. So where do you fit for college? You could put one semifinal on a Monday night. The other one, would you put it on a Thursday night? It's just kind of hard to figure out exactly when and where you could put the semifinals. And this is why it's an open discussion, because I don't have a solid, good answer on that. To put it simply, pros and cons. The pros from a college perspective would be the increased value and the increased meaning, sentimentally, emotionally, traditionally, for the bowl games and the playoff. They both increase in value. But the cons to this structure would all be about that scheduling And you have to also consider scheduling for the NFL draft and the recruiting season. It effectively adds an extra month of preparation for football for at least 4 teams. And that means the rest of the country can also have an advantage in recruiting. And then you also think about the teams that are playing in the playoff. And those players, they need to declare for the NFL draft at some point and begin to prepare for the NFL draft. College classes in a normal year would start sometime in January. So from that perspective of how taxing it is on the student athletes, how they fit in preparation and declaration for the NFL draft, and also how you are able to keep up in recruiting while everybody else is already off. Lots of questions to consider, but it's just one idea, and a very interesting one at that. So we can see a lot of pros, we can see a lot of cons. And that's why I wanted to bring it to your attention. So help me solve some of these problems, or maybe even bring it up in some larger outlets, and we'll see where this conversation goes over the next several years. Let me know, please, all of your thoughts in the comment section down below. I would love to hear what you think, and perhaps together we can solve some of these problems. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and consider subscribing for in-depth college football content. Thank you again so much for watching this video. Until next time, be goody now.